Alice Hindman's Emotional Adventures in Winesburg, Ohio. Winesburg, Ohio by Sherwood Anderson, a series of short stories linked together by their shared setting, the small town of Winesburg, as well as their exploration of human loneliness and connection. The book's ninth story, Adventure, follows Alice Hindman, a 27-year-old woman who has spent the last 11 years waiting for her sweetheart, Ned Curry, to return to her, something she eventually realizes will never happen. Eventually, Alice has an adventure, wherein she runs out into the streets on a rainy night, naked, with no care for the consequences, until she begins to regret her recklessness and retreats back into her house, defeated. Through Alice's story, Anderson constructs a tension between human emotions and societal conceptions of sensibility. Alice constantly tries, and usually fails, to be logical and sensible, despite feeling that her emotions drive her to be otherwise. Only when Alice fully embraces her emotions does she feel she is in control of her life, suggesting that these two things are not actually diametrically opposed. However, since she spends much of the narrative attempting to control her emotions and meet societal expectations, this false opposition is created, undermining her ability both to feel in control of her actions and to appreciate her emotional capacity. The way Alice's emotions are described throughout the story suggests that she often feels they are overpowering her and acting against her best interests. Frequently, the narrative tells that Alice's emotions took possession of her. When Alice first begins to feel that she has wasted her youth waiting for Ned, fear of age and ineffectuality take possession of her. At age 27, soon before her adventure, a passionate restlessness takes possession of Alice. There are then, during the adventure, 3 instances of this phrase in quick succession. A strange desire took possession of her, leading her to run outside. A mad desire to run naked through the streets took possession of her, before she does just that. And a wild, desperate mood took possession of her, when she debates whether or not to interact with the stranger she encounters. This phrasing prevents Alice from being the active agent in the situation. Instead, she is acted upon. It also suggests that she is not in control of her actions or decisions, as if possessed by a different entity. She does not possess herself in these situations. There are also other instances of Alice's emotions being separated from her own agency. Personification is often used to describe the emotions growing or changing within Alice as separate entities from herself, yet exerting power over her. For instance, several years into Ned's absence, Alice starts to doubt him, and the creeping fear that he would never come back grows stronger within her. This is not dissimilar to how her aching desire to be loved is described as the call that was growing louder and louder within her. Prior to her adventure, the text also describes that her imagination, like a child awakened from long sleep, played about the room. Immediately after this comes another sentiment of some other entity acting independently of Alice. Deep within her, there was something that would not be cheated by fantasies, and that demanded some definite answer from life. Even when her romance with Ned first begins, Alice is said to have been betrayed by her desire to have something beautiful come into her rather narrow life, causing her to enter into the relationship. These instances of personification remove Alice from agency or control over her feelings. She is not the one making these choices. It is the creeping fear, the call, the child that is her imagination, and the something inside her demanding answers. Her emotions betray her. Additionally, these separated emotions are often given modifiers that characterize them as nonsensible or impractical. Strange, mad, wild, desperate, and, in the case of her imagination, perhaps childish. These descriptors further disparage the emotions, trivialize their validity, and distance Alice from them. Comparatively, Alice's attempts to control or overpower her emotions tend to be an active voice, placing Alice as the agent, but also undermine her abilities to actually control the emotions. First, as she insists defeatedly to herself that, "It is not going to come to me, I will never find happiness." The narrative calls this her first bold attempt to face the fear that had become a part of her everyday life. This is largely a successful moment for Alice, then, asserting her own viewpoint with indicative statements, and she feels good about it afterward. Still, the text does call it merely an attempt, however bold. Later, the overall fragility of her efforts become more apparent even as they strengthen. During her time with the drug clerk Will Hurley, who shows interest in Alice, the text tells that, without realizing what was happening, Alice was trying feebly at first, but with growing determination, to get a new hold upon life. She is the active agent trying something here, and seemingly approaching success. Still, the use of the words trying feebly, and the idea that she did it without realizing, undermine Alice's power here. Finally, feeling defeated and hopeless after her adventure, Alice ends the story by trying to force herself to face bravely the fact that many people must live and die alone, even in Winesburg. Though here Alice is again the active party in the sentence, she is also once again merely trying rather than doing, and what she is trying to do is force herself to believe something, suggesting that success will be an uphill battle. Facing the situation bravely is typically the honorable, polite, and admired thing to do. This is the proposed solution to emotional turmoil that, for Alice, does not necessitate mad or strange reactions. It is the solution where she would be exerting more of the control rather than being driven by her emotions and desires. And yet it seems improbable that she will succeed. She can neither fully follow her emotions and desires, nor completely convince herself not to. Alice is stuck. When it comes to her adventure itself, Alice's reaction is a mix of negative and positive. Though initially Alice feels pulled by her emotions and is hesitant to follow, once she is running naked in the rain, she feels great. The text notes that not for years had she felt so full of youth and courage, which is particularly valuable for Alice, considering that fear and a feeling of aging were two of the emotional demons which had taken possession of her earlier in the story. At this point, she is still acting completely on impulse, but despite the seeming loss of control that comes with that, by shedding her fears, Alice actually feels like she has more power and agency here than earlier in the story. However, after she encounters the stranger and calls out to him, she begins to feel she has erred, and to react negatively to the situation. She drops to the ground and lays trembling, and is so frightened at the thought of what she has done that when the man had gone on his way, she did not dare get to her feet. She retreats back into her house and into her bed, where she buries her face in the pillow and weeps broken-heartedly. Then thinking regretfully, "What is the matter with me? I will do something dreadful if I am not careful." Here, Alice is focused not on what she wants or desires or feels, but on what she has done and the dreadful things that she may do. The expression that she needs to be careful suggests a goal of thinking through her actions rather than acting on impulse. Her previous freedom and power is undercut by the need to be responsible and sensible. Discussing Alice's devotion to Ned, even in his absence, the narration comments that, for all of her willingness to support herself, Alice could not have understood the growing modern idea of a woman's owning herself and giving and taking for her own ends in life. Though this is commentary on her relationship with Ned, it also parallels the way she has been described in relation to her emotions. She does not, many times throughout the story, own herself when these things take possession of her. She tries to control her own ends, including in the actual end of the story, but never seems convincingly able to do so, and it seems her efforts to control her life tend to be the very reason she lacks power. Alice's ability to understand the modern idea of owning herself is limited by the limited social possibilities for her within the small town of Winesburg, which acts as a symbol of tradition and the way things have been. The need to experience the freedom and self-determination of modernity may be why George Willard feels the need to get out of Winesburg in the end of the book, which is described in Departure as his own adventure. But Alice, rather than embarking on the adventure of leaving Winesburg to escape this lack of modernity, remains in the town and embarks on an adventure that she cannot fully enjoy, and ends not free outside in the rain, but turning her face toward the wall, stuck.